I hadn't heard that frequency in over a decade. Not since I was a junior radio tech mapping anomalous burst chatter out of Barrow, cross-referencing declassified Cold War comms with modern noise patterns. Back then it was all theory, ghost data, signal entanglement, and coincidence. Pattern hunting. Nothing ever stuck. But this wasn't a pattern. It was a call. January 14th. 3:47 a.m. right time. Temperature outside, minus 48 degrees Celsius. Wind chill closer to minus 60. The snow against the lab windows sounded like slow paper tearing. I was in the comms bay of D Block, half asleep over a steaming cup of instant coffee, when the ping came in, 3 short pulses then 1 long. 3 short. 1 long. Morse 4V. But it wasn't Morse. It repeated every 71 seconds. Exactly. Not a millisecond of deviation. The origin was what made my stomach knot. Coordinates embedded in the broadcast carrier wave. A crude sideband signature, like an old signal test, but nested deep enough I almost missed it on the initial scan. I traced it 3 times just to be sure. 62 degrees 15 feet 39 inches N, 153 degrees 42 feet 18 inches W. That was inside the Denali Reserve. But more than that, it was inside a blackout zone. A stretch of frozen tundra under federal lock since 1972. The official reason? Terrain instability. Avalanches. No-fly zone. Satellite blind spot. Bullshit. I accessed the NOAA deep records through a backdoor proxy I hadn't touched since grad school. The frequency, 121.9 MHz, call tag Xeon Frostline, was archived in a red class folder marked Decommissioned 1959. The last transmission? Right deep secure. All personnel accounted for. Signal integrity compromised. Termination protocols engaged. Dated, February 28, 1959. There was no mention of a right deep in any surviving Arctic facility logs. No construction records. No decommission notice. As far as history was concerned, it never existed. But someone, something, was transmitting from there. Now, I stared at the waveform pulsing on the screen. My hands felt ice cold. The rhythm didn't change. Steady. Intentional. I reported it to Central. 4 hours later, I was told I'd be leading a 5-person recon under a joint NOAA-EDOD protocol called Echo Restoration. Black badge. Off-book. Satellite dead zone extraction gear. No press. The plane arrived the next morning. We took off in silence, just the 5 of us, strangers in name only. I'd worked with 2 before. Eva Kessler, biocomputational theorist out of Juneau, calm to the point of unsettling, and Dr. Max Hellier, hydrologist with a reputation for going too deep. The others were new. Dr. Lena Rao, temporal field analyst. PhD in theoretical geophysics, hands that shook when she wasn't thinking. And Kurt Amston, security lead. Heavy set. Tactile. Quiet. Wore mirrored sunglasses indoors. His file was mostly black ink. The transport plane dropped us 2 miles from the coordinate mark. We traveled the rest by tracked crawler, an old military beast retrofitted for deep winter traversal. The route was mostly glacial crust and endless pale nothing. Wind like razors. Sky like lead. On the second day the crawler's instruments began to glitch. Compass needles spun. GPS flared and died. Even the inertial NAV couldn't agree on vector. That's when Eva tapped me on the shoulder and pointed ahead. Rising from the endless white like a mirage was a structure, no taller than a weather station but wider. Gray metal. Half buried in ice. Antenna towers collapsed sideways like snapped twigs. One word was visible on a frostbitten plaque near the door, half covered in snowdrift. Right. I stepped off the crawler and into snow so cold it hissed. Every instinct screamed to turn back. Instead I walked forward. The door groaned open like a grave unsealing. Frost cracked across the seam, a spiderweb of crystalline fractures chasing our intrusion. I was the first one in. My boots hit the steel-grated floor with a dull, hollow clang. The air inside bit sharper than the wind outside, stagnant cold, not just temperature but silence, as if nothing had stirred in decades. And yet the lights were on. Not bright. Not cheerful. But strips of cold fluorescent flickered overhead, humming like breath from a long-buried lung. The entrance corridor stretched 20 meters forward, flanked by rusting lockers and frost-bitten signage. Everything, walls, floor, ceiling, was caked in a thin sheath of ice. Not condensation but a fine lattice, like the building had grown frost from the inside. Behind me, Eva exhaled a cloud of vapor. This place is active. Power shouldn't be running, Max muttered, brushing rime from a wall panel. There's no known grid out here. No solar rigs. No geothermal. Kurt didn't speak. He simply unslung his rifle and scanned the hall. Lena moved beside me, shivering despite the layers. It's like the place was flash frozen mid-movement. We moved deeper. Room after room told the same story. Bunk halls with made beds, sheets stiff with frost. A kitchen with plates on the table, utensils frozen in place. An operations center with shattered screens, some still flickering static. Desks with yellowed coffee mugs locked in icy grip. Nothing was touched by decay. No rot, no mold, no dust. Just ice, sealing time like a museum exhibit. In the communications bay, we found the signal source. A rack of ancient radio gear, all analog, brushed steel and vacuum tubes. One reel-to-reel unit still turned slowly, powered by a thick cable running through the floor. On the wall beside it, a frequency list scrawled in red marker. The handwriting was spidery. Hesitant. 121.9 MHz, primary. 112.6 MHz, fallback. Do not respond. That line was underlined 3 times. The old terminal buzzed. 3 short pulses. 1 long. Again. Same signal, I muttered. Still active. Eva approached the desk, brushing frost from a stack of notebooks. Jesus, she whispered. These logs. She flipped through the top one. The paper was thick. Uniget. Plain. The date at the top. February 24th, 1959. These are fresh, she said. They shouldn't be. Lena leaned in. Look at the ink. No bleed. That was written recently. Weeks ago maybe. But it can't have been, Max said. This place hasn't been disturbed in 65 years. The logs weren't typed. They were handwritten in looping cursive. Day-by-day entries. Mentions of environmental fluctuations. Signal anomalies. Repetition drift. Then on February 25th, the mirror effect is accelerating. Sound is returning before speech. Movement is being rehearsed. Observation is the mechanism. They don't want out. They want reflection. I read it aloud. The room went still. From the speakers, static shifted. We froze. A voice emerged. Muffled. Garbled. But clearly human. They don't want out. My blood ran cold. I stared at the reel-to-reel. It was playing our words back. Our conversation. Echoed. Out of order. From a device built decades before any of us were born. Max stepped forward and ejected the tape. A word to a stop. Silence returned. Then, a knock. Not a mechanical one. A human one. From the far hallway. 3 slow taps. Deliberate. Echoing. We turned. Lights flickered. Kurt took point, rifle raised. I followed. We moved toward the sound, down a hall lined with sealed offices. The frost thickened here, not just a film but clumps like snow drifted indoors. Our breath hitched in our throats. One door stood ajar. Not by much. Just enough to see the edge of a chair. Kurt reached for it. The lights failed. Darkness swallowed everything. Then came the voice. A whisper. Behind us. Beside us. Inside us. Mirror. My flashlight clicked on. We were alone. Except the chair in the office now faced the hallway. And sitting in it, frozen stiff and rimed with frost, was a man. He wore an outdated uniform, military issue circa 1950s. The face was half preserved, half consumed by ice. Eyes open. Mouth frozen mid-scream. His name patch was nearly obscured, but I could just make out. Lieutenant R. Adcox. Max's voice was hoarse. That's impossible. Lena stumbled back, her voice shaking. Adcox was listed in the Black Book files. He was the original station lead. Declared dead in '59. He's been sitting here ever since, Eva whispered. Frozen in a scream. I stepped closer. The frost on his face looked wrong, too smooth, too uniform. Like it wasn't natural ice. Like it had grown outward. Lena was staring at the wall. There, behind the body, a massive chart had been nailed into the plaster. A waveform. Hand-drawn. Marked with dates and initials. Near the bottom, circled in red. Echo threshold. Beyond this line, identity fractures. And beneath that, in shaking letters. Shut the door behind you. Never look back. The entrance was hidden beneath a warped sheet of metal bolted to the storage bay floor, a rust-stained hatch overgrown with frost and silence. Kurt found it by accident, his boot catching the uneven ridge in the steel, sending him stumbling into the far wall. We gathered around the seam in silence, steam hissing from our mouths. Wasn't on the blueprints, Max said, crouching to brush away the ice. Shouldn't be here. Eva knelt beside him, running her glove along the rim. There's weld marks. Sloppy too. Someone tried to seal this fast. I stared at the bolts, thick military grade. War-era design. Definitely not part of the station's original construction. They were scorched like someone had tried to torch the door shut from both sides. Lena stepped back. Why would anyone lock up a shaft this deep in no man's land? Or cover it, Eva said, standing. Like they didn't want anyone to find it. Ever. Max tapped the metal with a wrench. It rang deep. Hollow. I pressed my ear against the hatch. Silence. Then, a whisper. Faint just above hearing. Graham? I jerked back, heart hammering. What? Lena asked. I shook my head. Nothing. Just ice settling. I lied. I knew that voice was mine. We spent the next 2 hours disassembling the welds, cutting through rust with portable torches. The metal screamed, releasing decades of trapped cold as we peeled it back. Beneath, a rusted spiral staircase descended into blackness. It smelled like old metal, oil, and something else. A breathless stillness. Eva checked the radiation meter. Nothing. No spikes. But magnetic interference is rising. Kurt checked the radio. Static's worse down here. Good, I muttered. Let's go deeper. We began our descent, headlamps cutting narrow tunnels of light through thick, frozen air. The stairs groaned under our weight. Every step echoed like it didn't stop, like there was no bottom, just an endless spiral through ice and time. The walls began to sweat. Not melt. Sweat. Beads of water formed where frost should have clung. The ice here wasn't white, it was clear, almost glassy, with veins of something darker running through it. Like it was layered. Like it had depth. About 50 feet down, the staircase ended abruptly at a landing of packed stone and reinforced concrete. And beyond it, an opening. We stepped into a corridor carved directly into the permafrost. It was wide. Too wide. More like a tunnel than a mine. The walls shimmered faintly, like something moved inside them. I raised my light and looked closer. Bubbles. Dozens of them. Each one suspended in the ice, trapped mid-motion, mid-breath. Mouths open. Eyes wide. People. Their faces contorted in expressions I couldn't understand. Not just pain or fear. Recognition. Some looked familiar. One I swore looked like a man from our briefing photos. A researcher who vanished in 1982. Lena gasped. Are those people? Eva stepped closer. No frostbite. No decomposition. These aren't bodies. They're copies. Carvings. Or echoes. That's impossible, Max whispered. Ice doesn't preserve like this. Not with that detail. That expression. I touched the wall. The cold bit deep. But more than that, something inside it shifted. The ice moved. No, not the ice. The image. The frozen face turned slowly to meet my gaze. Its mouth moved. Said my name. I staggered back, breath caught in my throat. The radio crackled on Kurt's belt. Graham? My voice. But none of us had spoken. Not even the radio. Just the echo. Playing from nowhere. Or everywhere. Who recorded that? Eva asked. No one, I said, voice hoarse. It hasn't happened yet. We moved deeper into the shaft. The corridor bent downward in a gentle spiral, walls tightening slightly. More faces appeared in the ice, not just frozen in fear now, but in imitation. Mimicking us. I saw Lena's profile. Then Kurt's expression twisted just slightly. The deeper we went, the more the walls began to mirror our forms. Then the ice changed. It turned darker. Organic. Faint. It pulsed when we walked past. The air grew thicker. The tunnel opened into a cavern. Massive. Unnatural. The ceiling arched in a dome of translucent frost, and embedded within it, structures. Not human ones. Not architecture, but forms. Loop spires. Nerve-like tendrils. Growing from the ceiling downward, or maybe rising from the floor into the ice. It was impossible to tell. At the center stood a pillar of glacial glass. Inside it, a room. A perfect replica of the station's radio control booth. Occupied. There were people inside. Moving. We recognized them. They were us. Not statues. Not frozen. Reflections. They moved in sync at first. Perfect mimicry. But then, the delay started. 1 second. 2. Movements offbeat. Expressions mismatched. Voices echoing at wrong pitches. They weren't copying us anymore. They were anticipating us. What the hell is this? Max breathed. Eva stumbled back, eyes wide. They're ahead of us. How? The chamber shook. A low sound echoed through the ice. Not a quake. A voice. It. Not language. Something older. The light in the central column flared. And in the reflection the other me smiled. Only I didn't. The smile was wrong. Like it wasn't an expression but a decision. I raised my arm. He raised his a moment later. But his hand was bleeding. Mine wasn't. We backed away in unison. Kurt's rifle was raised. I don't like this, he growled. This isn't just time distortion. This is mimicry. Advanced. Precognitive. I turned to him. But the figure in the glass didn't. He turned to Eva instead. That's when I realized. They weren't following anymore. They were choosing. Becoming. The corridor narrowed again after the mirror chamber, its walls closing in with the density of pressure-cooked ice. There was no warning, no marker, just a threshold. A line in the air we crossed without knowing until everything changed. The frost receded. The ice turned to concrete. And the year stopped feeling like the present. We emerged into a hallway that did not belong beneath the right deep station. The walls were dull gray steel, interspersed with aging insulation and riveted bulkheads. Rust crept like veins along corners. Old fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead, not with electricity but with something older. The air vibrated faintly, like a tuning fork had been struck nearby. Max was the first to speak. This is Cold War tech. Early Cold War. Lena moved to a console embedded in the wall. This is vacuum tube. Tube amps. Look at the paneling. Eva walked slowly past a series of lockers bolted to the wall. They were olive green, stamped with faded black labels. Names. Ranks. Naval? No. Civilian military crossover. What the hell is this place doing down here? Kurt muttered, running a gloved hand across the dustless floor. And why's it clean? I moved to the nearest junction box and flipped open the rusted panel. The power was still on. Soft red indicator lights blinked, sluggish but alive. Lena raised her thermal camera. She froze. You need to see this. We gathered around the screen. The entire corridor was room temperature. Warm even. But the ambient cold of the surrounding ice said otherwise. And there were no heat signatures. None from us. And none from the figures that had just rounded the far corner. 3 of them. Men. Clad in tan Arctic uniforms, thick canvas jackets, fur-lined hoods pulled low over their brows. They walked briskly down the corridor, heads slightly bowed, carrying clipboards, equipment, and old Geiger counter. They didn't speak. They didn't look up. They moved past us like we weren't there. Max stepped aside instinctively as if afraid he'd brush against one. But the air didn't move. They left no sound. No scent. Not even footprints. Just the soft click of boots and gear echoing faintly before vanishing into the next corridor. Eva exhaled shakily. They didn't see us. Didn't notice us, Kurt added. Like they were on a loop. I looked at the floor. The frost had receded entirely here. Tiles shone faintly in the low light. Everything was wrong. This isn't a hallucination, Lena said. This is structured. Purposeful. It's not ghostly, it's mechanical. Echoes, I whispered. We moved deeper. The halls became a maze. Each room we entered looked like it had been used yesterday. Coffee cups beside rusted typewriters, newspapers from 1959 folded neatly, cots made with military precision. A laboratory with old microscope arrays and handwritten logs. A canteen with trays still on the counter. And everywhere, the people. Dozens of them. Moving through corridors, disappearing behind doors. None of them looked at us. None made a sound. All silent. All warm on the instruments. All cold in the air. We entered what looked like a control room, half radar center, half monitoring station. Screens displayed nothing but static. Oscilloscopes flickered faintly. In the center stood a large table with a glass map embedded into the surface. The Arctic Circle, dated January 12, 1959. The same date from the journal we found in the station. Lena moved to a shelf stacked with magnetic tape reels. She brushed off a thick layer of frost, except it wasn't frost. It was something else. Fibrous. Threaded. It looked like spun sugar, but darker. Organic? She whispered. Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered. Then we heard it. Over the intercom, a voice. Grainy. Warped. But real. Experiment log. Section 12. Subject exposure duration exceeded parameters. Cognitive symmetry compromised. Repeating code 9. Silence. Then. Observer compromised. Correction initiated. A hiss of static. And then it stopped. I looked at the others. None of us had touched the panel. Max's hand hovered over a console. These controls aren't powered. That voice, it wasn't playback. Eva leaned in, staring at the radar screen. I saw something, she muttered. There. Movement. Briefly. Where? Here. She tapped a cluster of coordinates off the west quadrant of the map. I froze. It was right deep. The radar chirped. Then went black. The room darkened. And in the glass reflection of the control panel, I saw a figure behind me. I turned. Empty room. But when I looked again, the reflection was still there, standing behind me, wearing my face. Lena screamed. I spun, heart jackhammering. One of the people, the silent ones, had stepped into the room from the hallway. Only, he wasn't like the others. He stood motionless, eyes staring directly at us, expression neutral. Then he tilted his head slightly, and I saw his face clearly. It was Max. Not similar. Not close. Exactly. Max staggered back. No, that's not. What the hell is this? The copy raised its hand. So did Max. But the timing was off. 1 second delay. Then another figure entered. It looked like Eva. And then Lena. Then me. All four of us. Standing in silence. One beat behind us. Then they began to speak. But not in unison. They were saying what we hadn't said yet. Their voices layered, half-whispers, fragments of sentences we hadn't formed. Like they were predicting us. Or becoming us. The lights flickered again. A low pulse trembled through the floor, the sound of something immense shifting beneath us. I grabbed the others. We're leaving. But the corridor outside had changed. The walls were now glistening with frost again. Only this frost moved. It twitched. Pulsed. Breathed. And as we ran, the hallway behind us echoed with a voice I knew but didn't remember speaking. Observer compromised. Initiate reflection. We burst into a storage room, slamming the door behind us. Kurt braced it with his shoulder. What the hell is happening? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because on the far wall of that room was a mirror. And in it we weren't alone. The room was silent. A storage chamber maybe 20 by 20 feet. Bare walls of cold metal and ice-flecked concrete. Boxes stacked high with unmarked supplies. Coils of unused cable. A thick layer of frost on every surface. And the mirror. It was cracked slightly in the upper corner, tall as a man, bolted to the far wall. It didn't belong here. The frame was intricate, out of place in the utilitarian starkness. Black metal shaped like looping vines, almost biological. None of us moved. The mirror didn't reflect the room. It reflected something else. The hallway, but not the one we came through. In the mirror, it was longer, bathed in pale red light, walls slick and glistening like flesh. The floor pulsed subtly, veins webbing beneath translucent ice. Something moved at the far end, a shape too blurred to identify, pacing with perfect stillness. I stepped forward slowly. My reflection didn't follow. It remained still, staring directly at me, unmoving, eyes unblinking. Then it smiled. I stepped back. Max cursed under his breath. That's not a mirror. No, Eva said quietly. It's a window. To where? Lena asked. To what? I corrected. None of us spoke after that. The room had gone colder. I could feel my breath hitching, ice forming at the edges of my nostrils. But there was no wind. No vents. It was as if the mirror was leaching the heat. Then the humming started again. That low, oscillating tone. We all turned. One of the boxes began to vibrate. Lena moved toward it, opening the lid carefully. Inside, radios. Dozens of them. 1950s military handsets, perfectly preserved. They were all off. Except one. A soft red glow blinked behind its mesh speaker. It clicked on. And we heard it. A voice. Familiar. Graham, this is your mother. You left your coat at school again. It's cold out, honey? I froze. It wasn't a recording. It was her voice. Her real voice. She died when I was 16. I reached for the radio, hand shaking. Another voice followed. Hey, Graham, said Tyler, my old roommate from undergrad. You still owe me that $20. Then. Graham Keller, this is Dr. Michelle Hart from NOAA. We need to talk about the reading from section 14. Voices from my life. All of them. A chorus building. Then silence. Eva backed away. What is this place doing? Recording, I whispered. It's recording us. And playing it back, Lena added. Reflected through itself. Max looked around. This room wasn't here before. I swear to God. I checked this section when we came down. The station's rearranging, Eva said. Like it's sinking. Then the temperature dropped sharply. The frost along the walls turned to rime. The mirror darkened, like a shutter closing from the inside. And a sound echoed through the hall. Footsteps. Crunching snow. But no snow was in the corridor. We all heard it. A slow, deliberate crunching, circling the room from outside. Back and forth, pacing. Then a whisper. Max. It was Max's voice. But he hadn't spoken. "Did you hear that?" he asked. We nodded. Then it came again, clearer this time. "Max, come here. Please. Just come see." His face went pale. "That's my sister's voice." "She's not here, Max." But he was already walking. He reached the door. "Don't open it," I said sharply. He hesitated. But the voice returned. "Max, I'm freezing. Help me." He opened the door. The hallway was empty. Just frost. Darkness. Max stepped into it. And ran. "Max." We followed, but he was gone, swallowed by the corridor. We split up. Stupid. Reckless. I took the west tunnel, following echoes that didn't match my steps. The walls narrowed again, curling inward with patches of exposed ice. And in that ice, I saw myself. Not reflections. Imprints. Scenes. Images frozen inside the glacier wall. Me, age 7, hiding under a kitchen table during a thunderstorm. Me on my graduation day staring out over the bay. Me holding Lena's hand the day we got clearance for the Write Deep assignment. All captured inside the ice. I touched it. The surface was warm. Not ice at all, but something mimicking it. Preserving memory as if it were muscle tissue. A heartbeat thudded beneath my palm. I stumbled back. Then the voice came again. Max's voice, but wrong. Hollow. Echoing inside itself. "Graham, you have to see, it's beautiful down here." Then silence. Then Lena's scream. It came from the east hall. I ran. The corridor had changed again, elongated, bloated with fog. Shapes flickered at the edges. My face, my body, but distorted, repeating my movements like tape skipping. I found Lena curled in the corner of a room that hadn't existed an hour ago. She was breathing hard, eyes wide. "He's gone," she whispered. "I saw him, Max." But it wasn't him. Eva appeared moments later, cuts on her face. "What happened?" I demanded. "The station moved," she said. "I tried mapping my way back. The paths are folding. Overwriting." Lena looked at me. "Graham, the reflections, they're not just echoes. They're templates." "For what?" "To replace us." I looked toward the mirror we'd left behind. In its frame I saw 5 figures. All of us. Standing. Still. Smiling. But none of them blinked. None of them breathed. And all of them wore our faces. The corridor narrowed into what looked like an access tunnel. Frosted steel panels along the walls, some bent inward like something had pushed from the inside. We descended in silence, our flashlights casting long, trembling shadows on the floor. Lena led, her breath short and rapid. Eva followed close behind, one hand never leaving the wall, as if confirming it was still real. At the end of the corridor we found the door. Heavy. Industrial. Glacial layers had overtaken it almost completely, forming thick, semi-translucent curtains of ice. We spent an hour melting through with the portable arc heater. The smell of warm metal and ancient dust filled the air. When it finally opened, it did so with a shriek. The room inside was massive. A circular chamber, 40 feet across, ceiling lost in a haze of condensation and faint blue light. The floor was grid metal, coated in frost. And lining the walls. Tubes. Dozens of them. Tall cryogenic canisters, each encased in a ribbed cylinder of reinforced glass. Most were fogged over, but the outlines inside were unmistakable. Bodies. Human. Dozens of them. My stomach twisted. Each one suspended in glacial sleep, motionless but not decayed. Not aged. Preserved. Eva stepped closer to one. Her flashlight illuminated the face inside. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's Lena." We turned. She was right. The person inside the pod was identical to Lena. Same jawline. Same curls of dark hair. Even the faint scar beneath her left eye from when she fell off a bike in 7th grade. Lena stumbled backward, eyes wide. No. No, that's not." Eva was already at the next pod. "Max," she said. The man inside had Max's face. Pale and peaceful. Wearing a vintage cold weather parka with the Write Deep insignia. "But these suits are from the 1950s, I said. "That model wasn't even designed when we shipped out." Lena found the control panel near the far wall. Dusty. Dead. Until she touched it. The panel blinked to life. A soft whine, then green lights blinked in sequence. The interface was ancient, green phosphor text on black lines of archaic commands scrolling down. Date: February 28, 1959. Operation: Deep Sleep, Subject 12 active. Subject ID: Graham Keller. I stared at the screen. "No," I said quietly. Lena looked at me. I crossed the room and wiped the frost from another pod. My own face stared back at me. Eyes closed. Breathing shallow. I touched the glass. It was warm. Alive. I stumbled back. The others said nothing. I turned to the archive terminal beside the control panel. A faded label above the keyboard read, "Repeat authorizations." I typed a prompt. It lagged, then spat out a list of crew logs. Each had a date. The same date. February 28, 1959. Every time-stamped entry was listed as initial deployment. And beneath that, duplicate restored. Full cohesion 97%. Observation continues. Photos appeared next, black and white images, faded and creased. Our faces. The whole team. Captured in front of the same building we'd slept in our first night here. Same smiles. Same poses. The date handwritten on the back of each. February 27, 1959. Eva was shaking. "Graham, we were already here." "No," Lena said. "We weren't. This is a mistake. A projection." "Then how do you explain that?" I pointed to the pod. "The clone. Me." My features softened in frost, eyes twitching beneath the lids. I stared, heart pounding. I remembered something strange. A dream. I'd been underwater, looking up at a sheet of ice. Above the surface, figures. Me. Multiple. Circling. Speaking in voices I didn't recognize, saying things I hadn't lived. What if those weren't dreams? What if they were memories? Suddenly, the radios crackled to life. Static. Then the voice. My voice. But wrong. Slower. Deeper. As if aged through decades of replay. "You were supposed to stay asleep, Graham." We all were. Until the signal failed. Until it let us drift. Lena reached for her pack. Eva grabbed her arm. "Don't. We don't know what triggers them." Then another voice. Max's. Hollow and amused. "It's not death. It's reflection. The ice doesn't kill you. It remembers you." The chamber lights dimmed. Pods hissed. One began to open. Steam billowed out, rolling low across the floor. The figure inside opened its eyes. They were mine. But they didn't blink. Didn't react. Just stared at me. And smiled. Lena screamed. I turned back toward the door, but it had sealed. Behind us, more hissing. More pods activating. Eva backed into my side. "We're copies." "No," I whispered. "We're becoming them." And deep in the walls, the ice vibrated. A heartbeat. Growing stronger. The corridor felt longer than it should have. Every step echoed like we were walking through a cave instead of a research facility. The ice on the walls shimmered faintly, showing reflections that didn't quite match our movements. I stopped once, watching my own image in a frozen panel of frost glass. My arms lowered a second after I moved, my head tilting to the side just slightly wrong. "Do you feel it?" Lena whispered. Eva didn't answer. She had stopped responding to most things an hour ago, eyes glassy, breath too shallow. Her movements were jerky now, like a puppet slowly losing strings. I pressed a palm to the wall to steady myself, and nearly screamed. My hand. For just a moment it had gone translucent. I saw the wall through it, nerves and veins barely visible like shadows and fog. Then it returned. Solid again. I staggered back. "Did you see that?" Neither of them replied. The air was wrong. It smelled of metal and static, like ozone from a lightning strike. The lights above pulsed faintly, flickering every few seconds like a dying heartbeat. The floor beneath us was ice, but it was warm in places. Damn. We were deep now. Past the layer of the pods. Past the chamber with the terminals. Into a section I didn't remember entering. That's when we saw the first one. He stood at the end of the corridor. Back turned. Tall. Stiff. Wearing a parka like ours, though stained with dark streaks across the back. The hood was up. "Max?" Lena asked quietly. The figure turned. It was Max. Almost. The face was there, but the eyes were too wide. The jaw hung just a little too low. His mouth opened and he made a sound like a breath caught in reverse. Eva stepped forward. "Max, it's us." The figure blinked, once slow, mechanical. Then it opened its mouth wider. "W-R-Y-S-H-H-K-K. H-S-H-N-N? Not words. Not language. Just a suggestion of speech. like someone trying to imitate a voice they'd only heard underwater. It tried again. Jirchino. Our names. Mangled. It took a step forward. Like stiff. Another version of me rounded the corner behind it. This one had no eyes. Just skin stretched taut over empty sockets. Its mouth moved in sync with the other figure. Grum, grum, grum. The lights flickered. When they came back on, both figures were gone. We ran. The corridor twisted, turned back on itself. Hallways we'd passed already reappeared. Rooms duplicated. One door opened into a copy of the mess hall, but it was upside down. Chairs on the ceiling. Trays hovering midair like caught in molasses. The ice on the walls whispered, "Come back." We didn't. We kept moving until Eva collapsed. Lena and I dragged her into a side room. What looked like a server station. Racks of ancient magnetic tape and thick cables that had fused into the walls. Eva was breathing fast, her hands twitching like she was typing in the air. Then she began to speak. Except it wasn't her voice. It sounded deeper, distorted. Like a radio transmission played in reverse. I was awake before the freeze. I remembered sunlight then it blinked, and I was here. She looked up. Her eyes were wrong. One was hers. The other was blue. Too bright. Too flat. Too familiar. Was mine. I took a step back. She grabbed my wrist. My hand passed through hers. Not completely, but like passing through mist. I felt cold. Then heat. Then nothing. Lena was crying now. Quietly. "We're fragmenting," I said aloud. "The further we go, the less we stay ourselves." I looked down. My hand was fading again. No longer solid. The edges of my fingers were blurring like bad resolution. Eva whispered, "They're not just imitating us. They're interpolating. Filling in gaps we leave behind." I didn't understand, but I felt it. We weren't drifting physically. We were drifting between versions. Possible versions. Memory clones. Echoes. We left the room. More figures in the halls now. Some with our faces. Others, combinations. I saw a man with my mouth in Lena's eyes. Another with Max's posture but Eva's hair. All whispering. Some trying to speak. Others humming radio static. None of them real. And yet, somewhere in those malformed faces, I saw myself. Pieces I didn't want to admit. Anger. Guilt. Doubt. Fear. Parts of me that had been left behind in other choices. Other timelines. This place had gathered them all. Reflected them back. Now they walked the halls. And I was becoming one of them. My hand was gone to the wrist now. Lena didn't notice. I wasn't sure she could. I touched her shoulder, felt nothing. She kept walking. And I wondered, if I disappeared here and now, would she even remember I'd come with her? Was that what happened to Max? To the others? I looked back, and behind us the corridor sealed. A wall of ice. Smooth. Reflective. My reflection smiled. And I did not. It began as a hiss. Soft. Barely audible beneath the hum of old generators and the crunch of boots on frostbitten metal. But it rose steadily, a slow crescendo threading through every radio channel. At first, we thought it was just signal bleed, maybe interference from the decaying systems below the base. But then we heard it. "He's going to say we should split up." I froze. The voice was mine. Not recorded. Not past. Future. "Graham," Lena said beside me, "should we split?" She didn't finish. Her eyes went wide. She'd heard it too. We turned toward the comm unit, where the static crackled into words again. "He's afraid to say what he saw in the reflection." My breath caught. Because I was. No one had said anything out loud. No one had touched the dials. And yet, the radio was now speaking in our voices, reading our minds. Not just narrating. Predicting. Lucas staggered into the room, his parka half unzipped, face dripping sweat despite the freezing air. He held his hands out in front of him, trembling. "It's inside us," he whispered. "It doesn't need microphones anymore. It's listening through us." I stepped toward him. He backed away. The skin on his arms shimmered like glass beneath frost. Sharp ridges jutted from his knuckles, bone or something harder, something clearer. Crystalline structures were growing along his veins like frost flowers and fast forward. "I can't stop thinking," he muttered. "It keeps echoing me. Every thought, every fear, I hear it before I finish. I feel it speaking me." Then he screamed. Not in pain, in rage. He threw himself forward, knocking Lena into the far console. The radio screamed with her thoughts. "Don't let him touch me, don't let him touch me." Lucas bellowed. His jaw cracked sideways with a sound like ice fracturing under a boot. More of the crystals surged through his skin, forming hard, branching patterns up his neck. His fingers elongated. Joints reversed. "Lock the door," I shouted. Eva lunged for the reactor room access panel and slammed the emergency latch. Lucas thrashed inside, claws, yes claws, raking against the steel. He screamed again. But it wasn't his voice. It was all of ours. "Please let me out, please let me out, please let me out." The radio wailed, layered with each of our tones, overlapping in a choir of panic. He clawed at the glass window of the containment door. His eyes were pure white now. Not glowing, empty. Snowblind. The crystals had overtaken his face. His mouth no longer fit his jaw. "What the hell is happening?" Eva sobbed. Lena backed into a corner, shaking. I stared through the glass. Lucas had stopped moving. He stood still, twitching slightly. Then he smiled. His mouth cracked with the sound of fracturing ice. The radio buzzed again. "This is what happens when the signal finds symmetry." "What does that mean?" I asked. No one answered. The lights dimmed. From inside the reactor room, Lucas raised one hand, now fused with the crystal, and touched the glass. It frosted instantly. His voice came one more time, distorted and low. "Don't follow me. I'm almost done becoming." We left him there, still changing. The hall outside pulsed with static. And the radios, they didn't stop. Now they spoke constantly, repeating thoughts before we thought them. Dreams we hadn't dreamed yet. Memories that weren't ours. The signal had breached, and we were already becoming the noise. There was no longer an up or down. The walls bled angles that didn't exist on Earth, twisting inward and folding over one another like the pages of a book being read backward. Every hallway we walked felt like déjà vu. No matter which direction we moved, we ended up where we began. But things shifted. A chair facing a different way. A hatch now on the ceiling. Lights flickering in patterns that spelled no Morse I'd ever seen. We'd lost Eva 12 hours ago. Or 12 minutes. Or maybe we hadn't lost her yet. Time was a suggestion now. Our watches all displayed different hours, different days. The screen on Lena's wrist read February 28, 1959. Mine said March 2, 2023. Eric's had stopped altogether, frozen at 13 hours 13 minutes and 13 seconds. The understructure of Right Deep was breaking open. It was no longer the remnants of a Cold War mine. It was something grown, not built, long seamless corridors of frost-veined steel that pulsed faintly, like veins beneath translucent skin. Beneath our boots the ice creaked, but not from our weight. It was breathing. Lena clutched her head as we passed what should have been the old server room. It had transformed. No screens or wires, just walls that reflected versions of us, moments out of sync. In the far reflection, Lena was laughing. In another, crying. In a third, staring blankly with no eyes. "I can't," she stammered. "I can't stay in one timeline anymore." "What?" I asked, reaching for her, but she stepped back. Her image flickered. For a second, she duplicated, two Lenas standing side by side, then snapping back into one. Her face went white. "Did you see that?" I nodded slowly. Then Eric screamed. He'd stopped a few feet behind us. At first I thought he was choking, but then I saw his outline, warping. His arms trembled, his torso bent at a wrong angle. His movements were jagged like he was skipping frames. "Eric," I called. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Just static. He wasn't blinking. He wasn't breathing. His motion was constant, repetitive. Head jerking slightly, arm twitching. "Look. Graham," Lena whispered. "He's caught in between." "What does that mean?" She pointed to the reflection in the steel. There Eric stood still, watching us, smiling. But the Eric in front of us was stuttering like broken footage. Then he cracked, split down the middle like a peeling VHS tape, and vanished. No sound. No blood. Just an afterimage burned into the air, fading like frost on glass. We ran. Lena sobbed as we passed corridors that looped over themselves. Once, I saw a version of myself walking away from us, deeper into the structure, unaware. Another time, I glimpsed myself sleeping on a cot in the observation deck. Everything was happening at once. The air grew thicker, heavier. Every breath felt like inhaling memory, burned images, faces, voices. My mother's voice. My first dog's bark. My own laughter played back at half speed. "Graham," Lena gasped, clutching my sleeve. "You're bleeding." I looked down. My arm had gone translucent. No pain. Just gone. Veins and muscle still visible, but distant, like looking through frosted glass. "I don't feel anything." "Something's inside you," she whispered. "I can hear it. It's not your heartbeat. It's speaking. It's counting." And she was right. There was a rhythm inside me. Not pulse. Not breath. A clock. Counting toward something. Tick, tick, tick. I looked at my hand as it faded in and out, phasing between flesh and refracted crystal. The signal wasn't just outside anymore. It was inside. And I was becoming part of the structure. Of the loop. Of the echo. We descended deeper than the maps allowed. Even the schematics of Right Deep, archived and redacted and buried in Cold War secrecy, didn't go this far. These tunnels were too old, too precise. They hadn't been drilled. They'd been grown. Lena and I followed the hum. It wasn't sound anymore, not in the traditional sense. It pressed into the body like a pressure wave, a thrum that vibrated along the spine, behind the eyes, inside the blood. The walls were no longer ice or steel but something in between. Translucent, threaded with living veins that pulsed dimly with a pale blue light. As we moved, the corridors reformed ahead of us. Not random. Responsive. Like they wanted us to reach the center. We didn't speak much. Every time we did, our voices would echo too long, bouncing off walls with just enough delay to sound wrong. And when we fell silent, our words kept going, whispered back at us from further and further ahead. "Graham. Come in. Still cold, isn't it?" Lena clutched my arm tightly. Her pupils were wide, swallowing the green of her irises. "We're near it," she whispered. "I can feel others around us. Watching. Copies." I tried to respond, but my throat closed tight. Not from fear, from proximity. We were too close now, to whatever it was. Then the hallway ended. Not abruptly, but slowly, like a page curling away to reveal something underneath. Before us stretched a massive chamber. Cylindrical. At least 100 feet in diameter. The walls were curved, laced with mirrored filaments that shimmered like liquid silver. At the center, suspended above a pit, hung a structure unlike anything I'd seen. It resembled a gyroscope, all interlocked rings of unknown metal, orbiting a pulsating core of glacial ice. From the core, thin tendrils of frozen mist extended outward, touching the walls, the ceiling, the floor. The ice inside wasn't ordinary. It moved. Slowly, purposefully, like it was breathing. Like it was thinking. And within that translucent core, I saw faces. Dozens. Hundreds. Not trapped. Active. Their mouths opened in silent words. Their eyes moved. They saw me. One of them looked like Lena. Another, me. But not me. A younger version. Pale. Eyes too wide. Wearing clothes I'd never worn. But the expression was mine. The fear. The guilt. The recognition. "What is it?" Lena asked, her voice shaking. I stepped closer. The floor beneath the construct was transparent, revealing layers of what I assumed were memory strata, layers of ice, each one filled with images, scenes, moments frozen in motion. My 5th birthday party. My deployment to the Yukon. My father dying in a hospital bed. All of it layered in chronological strata, encoded into ice. "This isn't a machine," I murmured. "It's a brain. A memory vault. But not human." Lena pointed to the wall where a panel blinked with alien glyphs. "I think it records through us. Every step. Every breath. Every fear. It mirrors and repeats it. Adapts it. A preservation system." That was the only explanation that made sense. Something ancient. Buried long before our species stood upright. Not designed for us, but co-opted. Hijacked. A virus that didn't destroy, it remembered. Over and over. Like a loop. This is how it survives, I realized aloud. By recording minds. Copying. Echoing lives through time until reality collapses into redundancy. Lena's breath fogged in the air. "Why show us?" "Because we're good material," I said hollowly. "We're fragmented. Emotional. Complex. Our fear and memory create endless variation." She turned toward the ice core. "Then what are we now?" I didn't answer. I was staring at myself inside the ice. He smiled at me and mouthed, "You're late." The room pulsed. Every reflection in the ice blinked in unison. I stumbled back. The hum grew louder, sharper, and I felt the thing inside me, the alien rhythm, respond. It was sinking. "Lena," I gasped, "we have to shut it down, or we become part of it." She nodded, reaching into her gear for the thermal charges. We didn't have much left, just enough to bring the ceiling down if we placed them right. But as she moved, the floor opened beneath her feet. Not fell, opened. Like a mouth. She screamed, grabbing my hand, but the surface was slick with condensation. She slipped, her fingers grazing mine, and then she was gone, swallowed by memory. I heard her voice a moment later, not screaming, but laughing, from inside the ice. I set the charges with numb hands. Each one buzzed softly, primed. As I activated the final detonator, I felt the core surge, the tendrils of ice lashing out toward me like it knew, like it was pleading. You are not whole without us. The voices echoed from every surface, my own among them. You'll die with me, I whispered, and I meant it. I turned, sprinting back toward the corridor as the timer hit its mark. The last thing I saw before the blast was the ice cracking, and my reflection, smiling, like it had won. The collapse came quietly. It wasn't the roar of an explosion or the sharp snap of metal snapping under pressure. It was more like the slow, creeping silence that follows the death of something vast, something that doesn't want to die but knows it must. I watched Lena fall into the ice, her face twisted in an expression I couldn't recognize. It wasn't terror or pain. It was acceptance, a surrender. As if the cold had reached out to her, embraced her, and made her a part of it. Like she was always meant to be part of the ice, part of this endless loop of repetition. I wanted to scream, to pull her out. But my throat was dry and my voice betrayed me. The ice had already begun to swallow her. The echo was there again, thrumming deep within my bones. My hands trembled as I set the charges, my mind barely clinging to the rational thought that there was still a chance to stop it. I moved fast, desperate. I couldn't afford to waste time. The structure, this thing that I had foolishly thought I could control, had already begun adapting, shifting, weaving around us like a living organism. Every memory, every failure, every breath we'd taken was now part of it, feeding its consciousness, giving it power. It was never going to let us leave. I stumbled back down the corridors, hearing their voices in my head, the distorted, fragmented versions of myself. They were still there waiting. My own thoughts twisted. Echoes of people I used to be. People I would never be again. The hum was louder now. Thicker. It pressed into my skull like a vice, suffocating the fragments of my memories that still lingered. I could hear myself in every corner, in every shadow. My own voice, warped and broken, whispering words I had never spoken. You can't leave. You're already here. I clenched my fist. It was too much. Too many versions of me, too many memories, too much time. And yet I kept running. I had to finish this. I had to destroy it even if it meant becoming part of it. The last few steps felt like eternity. My heart hammered against my chest, my body refusing to cooperate, as if it were already part of the memory, part of the ice. But then I reached it. The heart of the structure. The core. I stood in front of the machine, the pulsating core of the facility. It hummed with dark energy, the tendrils of ice crawling outward, connecting to every wall, every corner, every fragment of space within right deep. It was alive, a living entity, and all of it, all of me was feeding it. I could feel the structure, the memory of the station, consuming me, erasing the parts of myself that no longer mattered. The fears, the pain, the faces, all buried under the weight of this place. I pressed my hand against the cold surface of the core. It froze immediately, as if recognizing me, as if it was waiting for me to arrive. And as I did, I heard the whisper again, more urgent now. Join us. There were no more choices. Not really. This thing, whatever it was, had already won. But I had one chance to make it stop. I turned the dial. The control panel was wrong. It flickered with images from the past. Lena, Michael, Thomas, a memory of something that didn't even feel like my own life. Each button I pressed warped the reflection of my existence until the images were twisted, half-formed shadows of people that were never real. I could feel the core pulsing, feeling the friction, the pressure building in the system. The explosion was coming. I had to overload it. I had to force the collapse. Everything I'd done had led to this moment. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I opened them, I was in the memory. I wasn't standing by the machine anymore. I was inside it. The structure had bled me into the past, into the frozen state it had prepared for me. Time wasn't linear. It didn't matter anymore. I was alive and dead at the same time, trapped in the place where the echoes met, where I met myself in an endless loop. I felt the machine strain against me, and I couldn't tell if I was being crushed by it or if it was feeding on me, absorbing me into its never-ending memory. All of me, I heard, and this time it wasn't a whisper. It was louder. It was the last version of me, the one I had been chasing, the one I had always been. The one who was doomed to die here but would never truly die. The ground rumbled beneath me and the ice above cracked, splitting open like an old wound. The structure was breaking down finally. But I couldn't leave. I was already too far gone. I watched as the ice began to consume the room, consuming the place. I wasn't part of it anymore. I was fading. I was dissolving, losing myself, losing my body, losing my thoughts. The ice overtook the core and then, nothing. The last thing I felt was the silence. Everything was cold, frozen. Then, just before I gave in completely, I pushed the button. And the station collapsed. It imploded inward. A shudder went through the walls, the floors, the air itself. The screams, no, the echoes, of everyone who'd ever been there, everyone who had ever existed in this fractured timeline, were drowned in the sound of ice crashing, grinding, tearing itself apart. I died. But so did everything else. I couldn't escape this place. None of us could. But I made sure it wouldn't spread. Not anymore. This was my end. This was the end of all of us. The end of the ecologic.